My question to you is, do you and your design team create just one Figma file for all the projects at Firefox?
The answer is probably a bit unexpected. We used really just one file. We called it mobile assembly file. So before that, we usually had like one file per feature or per core surface. When like a lot of like the core design language changes, it's much better to have it all be in the same place. It's almost like having like a whiteboard, and we all work there together. It can be frightening from times if you have like 10 people showing up in the file, but it's also fun because it's like everybody's in the same file, and it's much easier to just hop over to whatever the menu playground and be like, oh, what's going on there, and what can I learn from here for the area I'm working in, or kind of like what corner radius is going to happen there. And
welcome to Sneak Peek. I'm your host, Jay, and today with me, I have Nicole, who is a staff product designer at Mozilla Firefox. We've all used this browser a lot. A lot of us still use it. I love the browser. And in today's interview, we're going to be talking about a lot of cool topics. But the one I'm most excited about is how does Nicole and her entire team work out of just one Figma file? So everybody on our team, they don't have separate Figma files for different projects and stuff. They all work out of one file. So that's very unique. We've never covered that before. We're also going to be covering how Nicole collects design inspiration using Mobbin and a lot of other cool topics. So this is going to be a fun one. Nicole, super stoked to have you here.
yeah, me too. Thank you, Jay. Very excited.
I am looking at your Figma file structure and super curious. Can you just walk me around how you're organizing your Figma files?
Yeah, happy to. So let me give you a bit of context so to kind of like better orient you later on. So this is kind of like, it's also a bit of an experiment we are running inside of the Firefox mobile team, because this year we just set out to kind of renew all our mobile core surfaces because we didn't really look at them for quite a while. So we saw, why not work all in the same file, because kind of like our design language felt a bit outdated. So we needed to level up all the surfaces. And that was kind of like one of the reasons why we thought we could just experiment just using one file. And so kind of like four designers, 4 UX designers worked on that. We also have like content people we collaborate with and a very excellent research team. And just to show you a bit of like how we structured it here. So as you can see here in the pages section, we have design swarms, which are our weekly crits, just with the designers. We have a cross-functional review with like core stakeholders. We have like a place for our prototypes. And then we have like all these core major surfaces like onboarding, toolbar, menu, homepage, the tab tray, search, and then like random stuff below. And so we 4 designers worked on all of these surfaces.
So Nicole, this is very fascinating. My question to you is, do you and your design team create just one Figma file for all the projects at Firefox? Or is it like there's one Figma file for every different project that you create, in which everyone works out of the same file?
Yeah, so I think that's a really good question. And the answer is probably a bit unexpected. So for this one, we used really just one file. We called it mobile assembly file. But it's more like an experiment. So before that, we usually had like one file per feature or per core surface. But for this one, we set out in a like more of a time-boxed experiment, like a quarterly one, to look at all our core surfaces and really renew them and rethink them, because everything felt a bit outdated. For example, on Android, we were still on Material 2. We needed to definitely come to Material 3. And, when like a lot of like the core design language changes, it's much better to have it all. That was our assumption, to all be in the same place. It's almost like having like a whiteboard, and we all work there together. It can be frightening from times if you have like 10 people showing up in the file. but it's also fun because it's like everybody's in the same file, and it's much easier to just hop over to whatever the menu playground and be like, oh, what's going on there, and what can I learn from here for the area I'm working in, or kind of like what corner radius is going to happen there, and get like questions like that. So we are also all distributed and also work across different time zones. And I think this really helped us to just easily see what's going on. I mean, you could say that you can also jump between files, but I personally find the challenge of like, where is the file, and then going in there, opening it up, much more involved than just to switch quickly between the pages here in Figma. Yeah.
So if for this quarter, any projects that are shipping that are mobile related, they're all going to be in the mobile assembly file. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I mean, in this case, yes, because our focus was really on renewing the core surfaces. And then we had like this section down here where we looked at, smaller stuff like snack bars, toasts, and stuff like that. But yeah, definitely everything is in this one file.
So then how do you break apart? Because like if there's like multiple designers working on different features, and there's only one Figma file in which everyone works out of, how do you like organize it? Like whose work belongs where? Like, do you group it based on feature name? Is it based on the functionality?
Yeah. I mean, you can see like we have like onboarding, toolbar, menu, homepage, tab management, search. So these are all kind of like the major surfaces here, and we usually have like one designer working on, sometimes one designer works on multiple surfaces.
Can you go to one of the toolbar onboarding? I just want to see, you had a cover for each one of them.
Yeah, it's kind of like that's because Firefox is around for quite a while, and we have like a dedicated research team, which does like great work. So we have a lot of insights. We also have like, we have audits that happened in the past. So this is just a file to list all of like our past research, past work, past design that happened, and just put it up here. So just to make sure we are kind of learning from the past and moving forward. So what's kind of like really interesting is that we have a new tool. So as you can see here, we have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 decks alone around onboarding, which can be quite a lot because these decks can be very dense. And we just have a new tool which might be interesting to some people, which is called Insights Hub. And so we partnered with a service called Dualo. And it's a kind of like, you can it's a natural language search tool. So I can ask Dualo, tell me everything, about mobile onboarding, right? And then you get like a list of all the recommendations with like links to from what's the source. And the really nice thing is that it doesn't hallucinate. So you just can fact check, and it's just, it's very nice. So we just started using that, and that saves us actually a ton of work here for the research section. But then kind of like after that, we kind of move into, for example, here, we move into the playground, and every designer has a bit of like a different structure for their playground.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So if you go back to the cover,
Sure.
I notice in the cover, what you're doing is every designer is sharing all the previous work, all the research for it, what's the status about it. But how do you figure out, I mean, I know you work on the team, but if a product manager or someone were to go in here, or someone from design leadership, how do they figure out who's the designer working on onboarding? Where does it mention that onboarding, Nicole's working on it, toolbar, Arjav's working on it?
Right. We actually, we are a very small team. We're just 4 people who worked on that stuff. So it's kind of like we don't have really a need to document it. And this is, I mean, it's a designer's file. So kind of like who's coming in here are the designers and UX leadership. And so we have like the weekly crits. And so everybody's very familiar with who's the designer. And then once we get to a handoff stage, we move it to like a dedicated file. And then kind of like engineering and product and everyone who is involved at a later point of view exactly knows who to talk to about that stuff. But we didn't really see the need in like this more designer playground area to document who's working on that. Yeah.
Super helpful. Right there, you mentioned about creating a separate file for dev handoff. Can we look at that dev handoff file? Like, how does it different from this mobile assembly file that you're showing right now?
Yeah, sure. I mean, kind of like just really quickly jumping again to that, playground. Let me zoom out. As you can see, it's very big and very messy, and it just moves on through various iterations and, like leadership reviews and looking at foldables, private mode, all kinds of different things. So, and in the past, we realized that if you have like another page here where you do the designs, where you have the playground, engineers sometimes get lost. Sometimes also designers get lost, and which is totally fair because everything is so intermixed, like exploration, and then sometimes you have to go back and update stuff when you get feedback from engineer. So at some point we were like, oh, why not have like a dedicated handoff file? Because then you can just like use that one file, put it in the Jira ticket, just send engineers to that one file, and then the page structure is much simpler. And yeah, so we had like so far good experience with that structure. And so it's kind of like, we usually have like the flow, how it looks when it's responsive, some accessibility annotations. So for example, here you have like different states, like when you're on new tab, when you have to search up, when you're on a site. Then we have like, with like a browser, you have like all these, sometimes sites are unsecure, sometimes the reader modes, you have a long URL, you have like various cases to cover. And then sometimes you start with like unsecure and different options, right? Then you can have like a discussion with engineering. And then you can be like, okay, first we do the shield and we experiment with the not secure and see. And then reader mode. And then someone is like, oh, but what if we have a long URL in reader mode? How should it look like? And then you just add it to the special treatments. Yeah, because this kind of like the toolbar or the address bar is often, you see it as a given, but actually it's a very interesting space in the browser area because it transports so much around. Is the site secure? Can I trust it? And information on, we have different versions, top and bottom. Then we have how does it actually landscape? How does it look on the iPad? And then kind of like what's the accessibility annotations? If you have like a screen reader, what's the order? What should it say? So kind of like, and then we usually have like, as you can see here in the pages section, we have an intended design. So that's the ideal state. And then we go into discussion with engineering, and they are like, okay, listen, we can do like very easily, we can do like these few things, but we can't do other things. And then we start creating like that's the first release. That's 100, whatever, this release number. And then it maybe doesn't have translucency or it doesn't have like things that engineering is like, it's very difficult, right?
Yeah. Now, once you hand this off to engineering, they build it. How do you do QA? Like, do you tag them here in some of the designs saying that the design is not exact, the production is not similar to what I gave you in the designs?
Yeah. So here we have like, as you can see, we just create new pages. For example, design QA. So that was actually the first round of design QA after they implemented it. So we take a screenshot and then we say, okay, listen, notes in priority, right? Kind of like, okay, this is the wrong icon here, and this is the screenshot from what's in the test flight or in the nightly version. And then we just list kind of like what they should update in priority. So that's collaboration with product. And then we put like the intended design next to it. And that proved to be really helpful because then they can see it side by side and can be like, oh, that's what's going on here. And it also, because this stuff is so core to the experience, that we really want to get it right and really look for all the little details in the design so that it feels really good in the end. And that's kind of like, as you can see here, yeah, it's kind of like it's a bunch of things that we as designers also test. We also go to the long URLs and all the cases. We also have a dedicated, like that's, that shouldn't be in release, stuff like that. So we have a QA team. They also look at our Figma files, but I also find it good if we as designers, sometimes we just see more details.
I love the design details that you pointed out. Like there was one design detail that talked about how the cancel text was small, and you put in the extra comment that the cancel text is small, make it bigger in the special comments. I think, yeah, that's the one if you zoom in. So it was just like, for a second, I missed it myself until I read your comments, which said, increase cancel font size, it's a bit too small. And it's a very subtle thing. But
yeah, but I think it kind of like in the end, it makes a difference, right? Especially if you're so limited with the UI design as we are, because browsers are just a utility for most people. But in the end, I believe people notice the care we put into the UI, and yeah.
If you go back to the mobile assembly file, I have some questions over there. Since your entire design team is working out of this single Figma file, I'm curious to know, what are the benefits you as a designer see from this approach?
It was a really interesting experiment. So I think some people were a bit worried about it, like, oh, isn't it too big? What about performance? And then, as I mentioned, sometimes you have like 10 people in the file and everybody's doing something. It can be intimidating, but it was also like a lot of fun. So the big benefits for me are like, it feels a bit like a very big whiteboard, and you can just easily jump to other pages, see, oh, what's actually happening in onboarding, what are we talking about there. It makes collaboration easier because you don't need to find the file, open it, and so on. You can just jump to the other page. It feels much more fluid and flexible. Yeah, you can see all the work across all the surfaces. And I also think it adds to a feeling of shared ownership. So we all together try to level up our design language, which is really interesting and fun. It was, for me personally, it was just a really fun and interesting way to work, because I haven't used such a big file in my past work. So definitely. I mean, it's kind of like, it's also sometimes it can be a bit chaotic because it's just a lot of people in the file and a lot of cooks in the kitchen and stuff like that. But it's also a process. So, you start out and then you have like a rough proposal how you could structure the file. And then some people just, I think in the playgrounds, everybody does it a bit differently. And so maybe if we do it again next quarter, there are definitely a lot of learnings we can apply and improve that.
I have a question about it. I noticed that every single feature, like onboarding and toolbar, has a page called Playground. I want to know, what is a playground for you and how do you structure your playground?
Yeah, a playground is like a playground that kids have. Kids can go there and do whatever they want. So all the designers can hang out on their playground and do whatever they want to get to the designs and to get their best work done. So kind of like looking at that one, I personally start with just writing down the things I know, kind of like what research do we have? What's a bit of like research around Gen Z and how they use Firefox? And a few design principles that we looked at that could inform the work. Then I got like a scope from product. So I listed all of like that, what I knew from what's the expectation from product. Then I talked to designers who worked on the menu previously and engineers, and that, kind of like important stuff to know is that performance is really important. Whatever you do, it needs to be quick and fast, and you shouldn't add like any stuff that has the potential to make it any slower.
And you did all this before you started the project? Like the scope, the design principles?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like it's kind of rather quick, so I don't over-index on that. I just write down basically what I know at that point, or anything where I'm like, okay, that could help. I mean, here the notes, that's something that I keep adding because you don't start a project and you know everything. So you talk to people and they are like, oh, watch out for whatever custom tabs. And I haven't thought about that. So I write it down. So it's kind of like the anchor for the whole project. And then I document how does it actually look today on Android and iOS. So we also always look at both platforms. And then I kind of like, let me zoom out again. Yeah, I just put together like a super rough, almost like a wireframe type. And like, what are the different surfaces where the toolbar appears, right? It's new tab, it's the search, it's the side, it's then sometimes the keyboard pops up and then you scroll the side, the toolbar disappears. So I have an overview and then we have like these custom tabs. So that's when you open a link from within an app. Sometimes you get a bit of a browser artifact and that can come from Firefox. So I just document really quickly what surfaces I need to keep in mind. And then I just like have like a super rough foot because it's just like, anything actually. And I sometimes go back to this number one here just to try out stuff or just to see, what sometimes the initial ideas you have are not as bad as you think. And then you can go back to it. And then I kind of like, I start to, as you can see, like I don't even know what I did there. A bit worried to zoom in, but whatever. So you can, just doing a bit of like super quick, like, okay, what if we have like two toolbars here? What could we?
Is that what you do in the notes below? So that there's some notes, some text below it. Is that what you do? You document what this version is?
Yeah, this is kind of like, I just copied Safari for reference to see what they are doing. And then I just added the Firefox icons and I moved the log to the right. Oh, it's really helpful actually to have these notes, right? So I just write down what's the diff between the previous version, right? And then different icons. And then also like what's the big minus is that we would need to educate existing users because we would break their muscle memory. So I try to quickly think through various cases, right? What if we have like multiple icons? What if the menus here might be a bit weird and so on? So that's very, very quick actually, just to try out a wide range of stuff. And then at some point there is always a leadership review. So I kind of like come up with a bunch of options, document like the different sides just to give people an idea what's going on. And then there is like some stuff gets approved by the UX leadership. And then you kind of like try to incorporate their feedback and move it to the next level. So I always do like this timeline thing. So I start on the left and move to the right with just like a scroll here. And then like, okay, then you go into details. What about actually, once you nailed like the phone design, you're like, okay, what about iPad? What about landscape? Do we have all the icons? Should we refine some of those? And then, we want to offer some customization options. How does it actually look in settings? Moving from iOS to Android, because we don't want to diverge too much, but definitely rely on platform conventions. Then maybe a prototype. There is another leadership review. Then, just like more details.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Get the idea, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, in this process, how do you collect design inspiration? Like before you're starting off and you're like, this is what I'm going to design. Where do you go to get design inspiration? How do you collect it?
Yeah, sure. Maybe we can go to onboarding because that's a bit more interesting than the toolbar. So what we did here is we just looked at kind of like what are actually the top apps on Android, right? And then we had like these tables of, okay, we just compare, we just look at the whole journey from the App Store, welcome screen, continued onboarding, what push notifications do they do, what emails, and then we just do a quick evaluation of what's working well, what isn't working well, And here we have like different focus areas, like, okay, do they focus on privacy, customization, productivity, AI? And then look at like all like these apps we identified here, like, in this case, it's Firefox and WhatsApp and Snapchat and Messenger and so on. And then we just document everything here below. And we do two things. So sometimes we try it out ourselves because I think that's different than looking at just screenshots, and to get a sense of like what are actually what's the motion design, what are the transitions, how does it feel to interact with it. So I think it's really important to try it out and get a feel for it. But we also use, as you can see here, we use Mobbin, which is actually a screenshot service, which makes it super quick to just pull out all the journeys. I mean, this would be so much work if you would just do it on your phone, right?
Yeah, I'm curious, like when you go to Mobbin, how do you look for design inspiration? Because they have so many screenshots. So if you were to go to Mobbin and search for it, how would you even go about it? Like, do you just search for specific, do you type in that I want to see fingerprint security? Do I want to see onboarding? Like, how do you even do the search? Like, what keywords are you looking for?
Yeah, let's see. Maybe I can show you quickly. Let me pull this over. So here, for example, let's say for WhatsApp, so you can just search whatever app you're looking for, WhatsApp in this case, right? So, and then you get like a whole bunch like of screenshots, and then you can here select if you are kind of like, okay, just show me all the whatever. How do you actually do a switch, right? And then, okay, good, whatever. Maybe not super interesting, but you can also go here to flows. You got flows, and then you have like all the onboarding. You have like a list of like their core kind of, it's massive.
I know it's possible.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of like sometimes I get lost, like I just saw, but it's actually very, very obvious. So you have like different ways to look, like UI elements. I find that sometimes helpful. I mean, not really for switches, but segmented controls can be interesting, right? Or other stuff. But the flows are really handy, right? So yeah, so that's kind of like, and then you go kind of like, okay, to onboarding, you can just do like a right click, copy the screen here, and you go back to your Figma. And you can just put it in here, right? So super quick. I mean, it wasn't the most useful screen, but that's how we got all of these here. And as you can imagine, it's just like very, very fast. And I mean, let me zoom out. And then you can also cover a lot of ground when you do it like that. And just, and you also have like on Mobbin, you have like the platforms, you have iOS, you have Android. Yeah, definitely something to explore. I always find, you have like here web and iOS stuff, a lot to explore on Mobbin. I can definitely really recommend that tool to increase the speed of your workflow here. And to just, I think it's so helpful to do like competitor research or find inspiration real quick. Sometimes when you get stuck, you just go here and I'm like, okay, show me just everything you know about, for example, about arrow pages, because they can be so much fun if done right. With like, not like that, but like the little UFO beaming up the cat, or like a lot of illustrations and stuff, just to get really a quick idea.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Mobbin helps solve that blank canvas problem because you're looking at so many different production-ready designs that it kind of gets your brain running on what to do next.
Definitely.
So this is your competitor analysis that you do in the onboarding. Okay.
Exactly.
So Nicole, right here, I noticed that you have a separate section that says leadership review, which is a very unique approach that I've seen. Out of all the Figma files I reviewed, what are the benefits of creating a separate section that's documenting just the leadership feedback?
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, it helps. It's almost like a milestone, right? At this point, decisions have been made or are going to be made on this very document that you look at. So you can kind of like copy a link right to the section that you can share. A lot of our leaders, are distributed. And so you can just share like that. And then everybody clicks on the link to send to like exactly this place and can review it. And it's just like, as I mentioned, I think the main point for me is just to have like a very clear point in my timeline where it gets a bit narrower, right? I have like 3 options here. I'm like, which one is it? What should we try out? And then leadership is like, okay, this one works. Have you look at and have questions and stuff like that? And then we can move on and very refine from there. So we just have like, we have a bit of like a documentation, what's happening here. We have what from designer point of view, what are the advantages of that approach and maybe the disadvantages for each version. Then we have like a bunch of options here, a bit of a flow. So this is also like from here, we usually refine it and move it out into the design swarm or a dedicated file. Sometimes we also do decks, which are more refined, because even here, if I don't walk people through that, they would get lost because it doesn't really document like a clear flow. So for this kind of stuff, you need a clear narrative. But for me personally, it helps me just to structure my approach. Okay, it's like, okay, I want to present these 3 options. These are the advantages. These are the disadvantages that I want to talk about. So just to give leadership all the information to make a decision or to kind of like ask the right questions to move us to the next stage of the design. And that's what I'm doing in this section.
Then you've got another section right after it which says approved by leadership. Can we zoom into that and see what are you documenting in the approved by leadership one?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's kind of like here in this first box, I just have like the screens that are approved from that review. And then I have like a list of stuff that I need to work on. So it's kind of like, okay, dark light private mode, that's already done. So it's kind of like a checklist, right? So landscape iPad, and then also like hypothesis for testing and writing that down. So that gets, as you can see, much more concrete what's going on there. And then I also have like a bit of a change log, what changed from what I need to change from the leadership review. For example, the shield icon to make it look less busy, because it's very small, right? So it needs to be simpler because you almost can't see the little check mark in there and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's just it's a playground way of documenting kind of like what I need to do before I can hand it off to engineering.
Got it. Since content design, product design, everyone just works out of this one Figma file, I want to know, how do you collaborate with the content design team in Figma? Do you like just tag them in the comments, or do they duplicate your designs?
Yeah, I mean, here in the onboarding section, we have a content playground. So let me go there. And so that's kind of like how we work with content. So sometimes they leave comments and we reply, or they are like, so it's also like different from person to person. Here, for example, there is a dedicated content playground page where they try out different things. Also here in the menu, that might be also a good one where we can look a bit closer. So that's kind of like our menu where we have like a bit of like a banner call to action at the top. And then we have like, they have we have a team of content designers and they have like weekly jam sessions. So they get together and try out like a bunch of ideas, how they could phrase it, and then discuss kind of like what matches our tone, what makes the most sense here. And from our point of view, we always try, as you can see here, to create like that resize. So when they come up with like a lot of stuff, and then I think it's best for them to just try it out in context, right? And then we get together and put limits on it and say, you know what, this is too big. We can't put it in the menu. And then we just say, okay, headlines, two lines and stuff like that. And then it's kind of like maybe also interesting. So out of that explorations, there are a few like options they come up with. It's also really because we support so many languages in Firefox to test it in other languages. just quickly to see if, I mean, German is always a bit bigger. So, right, does it still fit in the box and stuff like that? And then they just have a few options here for a product and sometimes marketing to review, also how it looks in context and stuff like that. So that's kind of like, I think that's a really nice way of working with the content team, to give them their own playground and to enable them just to try it out in context. So it also reduces the back and forth between, they're writing a comment and you put it in there, then it's too long or it just like doesn't feel right. And so with like this approach, they can just see how it looks and how it feels, and it's a bit quicker actually.
Makes sense. And on the left side, I also see that you have at the top some other pages, cross-functional, and I want to see what those are.
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned, the cross-functional review. So this was like a quarterly project. So we had kind of like a bigger review with like cross-functional stakeholders from product engineering around how we want to change all these core surfaces. So it was before we used Figma slide. So we just want to keep it in the same file. So we put it here. It's probably something we would do differently next time. And, it's just like going through, like giving the teams a bit of like a context and then going over like the different surfaces that we saw as pages here, like onboarding, homepage, new tab, toolbar, and tab management. And then it's just like, quick context. I think I blurred out a few like things so I can zoom in, kind of like what's the strategic alignment? How does it ladder up to our OKRs? What's the design rationale and our hypothesis? And then kind of like, where are we in the design? So we're kind of like mid-stage. And what are we looking for in the feedback that we need here, right? So I think this was mainly about a go, no-go decision. If there are any like major concerns, and then kind of like in the actual kind of like surfaces, we just showed people again a little reminder of where are we coming from actually, how does it look today? And then kind of like where are we going, right? What are kind of like the screens? How do they feel? How do they look? Are there any like details we want to find out, especially? Same with like homepage new.
I like how you have from. Everyone has like a from and to. So to is your new design, but then from, you're showing the cross-functional leaders what your current design looks like for context. I love that.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful to give just people I mean, everybody is familiar how it looks, but then if you see it again and you're like, I think it's just a good reminder, because then everything you do after that usually feels much better and much fresher, because people are like, oh, this is where we're coming from, right? Yeah, oh yeah. And then they can compare it. I find that really, really powerful, actually. Yeah.
Makes sense. So can you show me, Nicole, what is the design crit or design critique process at Firefox? What does that look like?
Yeah. So we're still in the same mobile assembly file. So it's kind of like the top page. It's called Design Swarms. So we have weekly design crits where the team comes together, and let me just zoom out real quick. So you can see it's again like this timeline approach. So we start in February, and then this one ends in sometime mid-April. It's just like every week a different topic. Someone signs up ahead of time. We kind of like here we started with the toolbar, looking at a bunch of options, just the toolbar, and then it was the same crit, because it wasn't too much. It's 60 minutes. So we also looked at snack bars on Android. Like here's like what's in production, what's the proposed update, also for iOS. And then that kind of like continues, right? Some people add a bit of like more context here or take notes while they present the stuff.
Where do designers do like riffing? Like if you're doing this design crit and I have an idea that I want to show you, where's the playground or something where I can take some of the designs you're showing in the design crit and modify it or change it?
Right. Yeah. I mean, usually people can do it right here in this space. Sometimes people just just copy it over and just take a piece and put it somewhere else, right? And then try it out. So I think there are a lot of opportunities. How we don't really have like a fixed plan for how to do it. So we also because this ends in the mid of April, we started kind of like a new file for that, and then it's much more also like with async comments, and just people go in there and leave comments and feedback, because we found that some people prefer just to don't feel comfortable speaking up in a meeting, so they can just leave comments in Figma or just like copy it.
So my question to you, Nicole, is like, you mentioned that your team also, some of the designers don't feel comfortable always speaking up in live design critiques, so they prefer to give asynchronous design feedback. So can you show me an example of like how designers on your team are doing it? Like maybe we can review one of the comments. I just want to see the specific structure the designers are using. Is it very brief to the point? Is it very detailed explanation about the feedback?
Yeah, so happy to. So this is a different example that where, it's a rather big project. So it took up actually a lot of time during the review so that all the designers had enough context. And then what we usually do is go in there and just leave comments. So let me maybe jump to one of that here. That's one, curious if this type of layout would create a behavior where the user can game the system and make it too easy for the user to just keep reusing, not giving them. Okay, this just maybe to give you context. So this is about, we have the service called a Relay, and you have like a limited amount of 5, and then if you pay like a very small fee, you get more Relay emails, and this is kind of like, how can we explain that to people? And that's kind of like during the crit, Jeff asked a very valid question. If this makes it too easy, and then there is kind of like a back and forth, and then kind of like replying to that. And then, sometimes it's also like where our designers just say, I really like this version. It's really, really nice. And then we have like our content designers where they just focus more on kind of like, can we lead with the, like Laura here, can we lead with the benefit instead of just talking about the upgrade, and right away adding like a riff here, how we could phrase it. So that's also how we work with content designers. And then there are kind of like, as you can see here in the comments section, like a bunch of comments from research and content and cross team collaboration on kind of like I find it a really nice way to interact, because then people have, some people just need a bit more time to process. In this case, we saw like 3 versions, and then you need to think through the whole flow and what works in that case. And then you can probably leave a bit more thoughtful feedback later on.
Do you see a future where maybe design teams should just completely cancel design reviews like live and just pivot to async design feedback only? Do you think that's helpful, or do you think there should be a mix of both?
I actually love the mix of both. I love talking to people. It's just very different, and it's not for everybody. I see that. But I think it's kind of like, sometimes when it's a different mode of thinking. If you are, like I'm talking to you, I just need to make things up as I go. It's different than when I can just write an article. It will be very different to this one. And I feel like design crits are also like, you see something and then you have a reaction, and then you have an opportunity to articulate that reaction and share it. And I find that really nice. Also kind of like it makes, we are all distributed at Firefox, and just seeing people and talking about designs is very nice.
If you had to give one advice to the viewer, anyone watching, what is that one advice you will give them? One takeaway for them?
Oh, just stay curious, definitely. Just, whatever comes your way, just look at it with curiosity and try to, welcome it and see what comes out of it. Like, if you look at our massive assembly file, it can be very frightening, and it can raise a lot of questions. But, you can just try it out for 3 months. You don't need to commit to it forever. And, also with the whole AI stuff that's coming our way, there is so much good and interesting stuff that, just embrace it and be curious about it. yeah, I think that's kind of like one of the biggest traits that we have is just curiosity. It's almost like playing games. Like, if you look at children, I think they do it right.
Got it. Folks, thank you so much for watching this sneak peek interview with Nicole. And Nicole, thank you so much for coming on Sneak Peek and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it. I had a fun time.
Hey, this is Jay. It means the world to me that you watched this video. If you want to unlock the AI design and growth design interviews with designers at some of the top companies in the world, then head on over to sneakpeek.design and subscribe to the newsletter.